Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. So today I'm going to be doing a tank item tier list. This is basically where I'm going to rate each of the tank items against each other and how effective they are, the cost, the stat line, the versatility, stuff like this. And then, yeah, I'll talk about some of the items. So let's get into it. To begin with, I want to talk about both the burn items. This is Sunfires and this is Hollow Radiance. The magic resist one and the armor one, which I'm gonna put both in S tier. The main selling point of these is obviously the fact that you get access to really strong wave clear, which scales with your bonus health. This is a lot of power for a lot of champions, as tanks tend to have relatively weak wave clear, as their damage is on the lower side, not quite as high as bruisers, not quite as effective as a lot of the other champions within the game. Hollow Radiance does kind of slightly outperform Sunfires, but this is more due to the fact that the accessibility of a lot of the magic resist options in the game at the moment just isn't as high as some of the armor ones, where you can more effectively slot them into builds. Plus the fact that the likes of Frozen Heart, which I'm also going to talk about now, is an S plus tier item, does make it so that Hollow Radiance can be picked up alongside this, and you still get an effective amount of armor and magic resist. Of course, Frozen Heart is the best tank item in the game at the moment. For what I believe is 2,300 gold in cost, you get 70 armor. I believe you get a bit of CDR, a bit of mana, and on top of this, you get access to the attack speed cripple, which is really valuable. A lot of champions get really hurt by this, and it's even more effective in high elo, where they tend to be able to weave in autos more effectively. This all adds up to being a really strong item. Alongside that, it also does have the rock solid passive, which Randuin also has. I'm going to put Randuins in the A tier. But yeah, overall, Frozen Heart, really strong item, really cheap, accessible by most champions. Unless you don't have mana, in which case the likes of Mundo, or you're not really kind of relying on mana and you need the accessibility towards like health, most Heartsteel users kind of fall into this bracket. But yeah, it's a very strong item. Loads of supports really like it. But yeah, it's going to get nerfed next patch. Randuin's Omen is a very strong item. Being able to reduce 30% of critical strike damage is very powerful. Alongside that, it has an active which slows, makes chasing down opponents really nice. It also has the rock solid passive, which reduces a flat amount of damage up to 20% of the damage of the attack, I believe, which is a very effective passive. Reduces a lot of just unnecessarily high damage or like chain damage. Yeah, it adds up to a decent amount. Very effective against the likes of Argot, for example. Overall, this item, not as good as Frozen Heart, tends to be more conditional, mostly running it into things like Graves, Yasuo, Yone. If they have a couple of these alongside a crit marksman, then it makes it a very good purchase. But for the most part, it's A tier, as it's a bit more conditional. King of Rukun is going to be in the A tier as well, actually. This item is very nice if you do have a large pool of health. You can pick it up as a second or third option against the likes of burst mages. Of course, if the enemy team doesn't have a burst mage, then this item tends to be less effective than some of the other magic resist options. But yeah, against burst mages, against AP assassins, champions which really enjoy Storm Surge, like Fizz, Diana, it can be a very effective purchase. I believe it's most used on Bard at the moment, where you go Frozen Heart into King of Rukun. Ornn is another champion which very much likes this item, but Ornn does also like a lot of the items within the tank pool, so yeah, it's very much open to, if you need it, it's a strong item. Not quite S tier, but definitely a solid A tier item. Alongside that, I'm actually going to put the other two, another two magic resist options in Abyssal Mask and Spirits. Abyssal Mask is a lot more conditional. In fact, you really want to have an AP, like either one or two AP sources on your team to make use of the magic resist shred. Alongside that, you want to be a champion which can effectively use the stat line. So not only do you have to be playing against a decent amount of AP, but you also have to have a decent amount of AP on your team to really get a lot of use out of this item. because it's a bit more conditional, even though it is a good item, you tend to, I mean, it will mostly be in the A tier as a conditional option. Spirits is also very conditional. You tend to see this item mostly on Mundo and Tahm Kench, as these champions can really easily abuse both the shielding and the heat. Well, in Mundo's case, a lot of healing. In Tahm Kench's case, a lot of shielding and a lot of healing. It makes it a very strong magic resist option, best in slot for Tahm Kench, one of the best options for Mundo. But overall, because it's a bit more conditional, you only really see this item on the likes of Shen, Mundo, Tahm Kench, so yeah. Zeke's Convergence, I was going to say Zeke's Herald, but yeah, Zeke's Convergence is a lot more different compared to what it used to be. It now casts a storm around you whenever you use your ultimate. This is very nice for a lot of the supports, for likes of Leona, Nautilus, Rakan come to mind as very strong uses of this item. Of course, it's very much tied to your ultimate. If your ultimate doesn't effectively use this item and you're not as reliant on sticking to someone, then this item tends to be a lot less valuable. But as a cheap option with a lot of power, it is a very good item, so it is a solid S tier option, even though it is a bit more conditional. Alongside that, Trailblazer is the other premier support item. This is, I mean, it's already been nerfed, but it is still a very good option on the likes of Rakan, Rakan, Rel, Leona, Alistar. There are lots of champions in the support role which can really, really value this item for its movement speed. I think of it like a cheaper Deadman's, where you're being able to assist your allies in giving them more movement speed, which is a very underrated stat. It is very important for a lot of champions, being able to have that chase and that mobility within fights. Winter's Approach is not a great item. In fact, I'm going to put it in the B tier. It's very conditional in its uses. If anything, it's like only Skarner and Tarek which you really ever see this item built on. Even though it's been buffed, I believe 2 or 3 times since it got nerfed on release, as the likes of Poppy and Ornn used to be really big buyers of this item. It hasn't really found its place in the meta. The problem is, items which are just purely health are very counterable. You can build anti-health items, like, I mean, LDR to a degree is an anti-health item. It has the Giant Slayer passive, but the main one obviously is Bork. Having Bork can really just make health items kind of feel negligible, unless they are very strong. Other than that, of course, Leandry's also very good against health stackers. But then Heartsteel, I'm going to put in the A tier, as there are champions within the game which are just reliant on this item. There is no other way around it. They have to build it, otherwise their champion is a large amount worse. That is Mundo, Tahm Kench, Sion, and Cho'Gath, I believe, as the 4 main culprits of this. Am I a fan of it? Not really. I don't think being tied to an item this aggressively is that good. But Heartsteel is a very fun item to use for a lot of these champions, so I'm not surprised they leave it in like its state for a lot of them. Even then, they encourage it with like Mundo buffing his health ratios, and same goes for Tahm Kench, where they buffed his health ratios. Knight's Vow, I believe this item is slightly weaker than last season. Lost a bit of ability haste for armor. This overall hurt the item a bit. Finds itself within the B tier. Trailblazer and Zeke's just work as a solid pairing for a lot of supports. And then Locket is a really nice item into comps which can be effective, well, which it's effective against, which is why that also finds itself in the S tier. But Locket is also really valuable in a lot of supportive junglers, the likes of Sejuani, Rel, even to a degree some of the more bruisery ones. Like, I've seen Vise build this and have relative success if they are going like a bruiser variant. So yeah, there is a lot of value to this item. Having that shield can be really important, whereas Knights just isn't as valuable this season. Wouldn't surprise me if I end up buffing it a slight bit to kind of make it more appealing as like a support option alongside these other items. Frozen Gauntlet, or Iceborn Fist, I can't remember its title at this point. It's been changed a couple of times, but yeah, it's not great. Certain champions do really need it for the sheen, the likes of Cassante, Alawi. I know Udyrs and competitive are rushing it, but then I know there's a lot of kind of like distaste taste around that, whether it's actually needed. I believe it's fine in certain situations where you really value that slow, and being able to stick to champions, also being able to value that sheen can be quite important. But of course, then I look at it and like, unless you're you have to be a sheen user to use this item. If you're not a sheen user, it feels really bad and clunky to kind of work around, and overall, it's just not a great armor item. So yeah, unless you are very much reliant on machine and kind of like a tankier stat line, this item just doesn't really work on them. So it's in the beta. Jack Show. Well, okay. So I've never been a fan of Jack Show. I'm not a fan of an item which scales resists or amplifies resists, as unless you have pre-built resists, it is just it feels really bad to have as an item. There is no other than tankiness. You're not really getting much of a stat line out of this item. Like a periodic tankiness, you're not getting much of a stat line out of this item. However, when you do have a lot of health and you can effectively utilize the additional armor magic resist, this item is very powerful. As a 4th, 5th slot, it's very strong. Not sold on it being like a great 2nd, 3rd slot, but some champions do value those resists, especially if you do have the health to go alongside it, and the resists as well. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this item, but it is a solid option if you are looking to build it 4th or 5th with other resists to feed into it. Anathemas is also going to be my A tier. Anathemas is only a health item, or health and CDR, 2,600 gold in cost. This item is really valuable in the specific case of a single, or like a single damage type, which you can't itemize, well, where you can itemize around the rest of the team, and against a specific carry. So let's say a Fizz is turbo fed. You need some sort of way of shutting him down, and then the rest of their team is like armor heavy, and Anathemas works great because you can effectively put it on him and then focus on armor. Of course, you can still pick up some magic resist. There is always value to that, but it makes it less of a necessary stat. The only real champion which frequently builds this, maybe in certain circumstances where you're not looking for a specific anti-carry, is Mundo. Past that, you don't really see it, but it's still a good item. As an anti-carry item, it is very valuable, and people should definitely pick it up when there are certain situations like that. Full Mail is going to be my A tier. So Full Mail, really valuable for the heal cut against a lot of champions. If you have the armor or you are Rammus, then it is also a very strong item. The Reflect does a huge amount of damage, which cannot be understated. It now has like a 25% armor ratio, whereas it used to have a 10% in the past. So now if you pick up a lot of armor, it does get a lot of value out of that. I wouldn't really recommend going the full item unless until later on into the game, where you might have like a Sunfire pickup, a Randuin pickup, or a Deadman pickup, something like that. But it's still a very valuable item and works in most games where there are a decent amount of works in a lot of games where there is a decent amount of healing. Deadman's going to be my A tier, so I think this item's actually pretty strong. A lot of people kind of sleep on it, and I reckon, I mean, I believe it's very strong on a lot of bruisers at the moment. The likes of Argot, Volibear, Poppy can all really, already value this item. The fact that it's lost its slow and then gained a bit of slow resist on it is actually quite valuable, especially for Argot, who never got access to the slow before. So this item is just strictly buffed for him. Overall, yeah, this item's pretty solid. A lot of champions should really consider it if they are looking for a bit more movement speed. Skarner is another one who can really value this. Rammus as well. Yeah, solid option. Works as a good 2nd, 3rd movement speed pick. Unending Despair, so I hate this item. I think it's terrible. When combat is really quick at the moment, unless you already have a large amount of tankiness and you can utilize its I believe it's a 7-second heal rotation, heal damage rotation. I'm just not a fan of it. It takes way too long to come online. The stat line's mediocre. It's supposed to be decent on Tahm Kench, but I mean, at least that's what the data suggests. But then I've built it a couple of times, and unless you're running like Ingenious Spirit, it feels bad. Like you're not getting a huge amount of value out of it. Yeah, I'm not a fan of it. I'm not sold on it, definitely. Titanic Hydra. So Titanic Hydra is being poached by bruisers. It's been given AD, or given a lot of AD, and lost the health scale, or health to AD conversion, which I'm not hugely sold on. I believe it was healthier as an item when it was more of a scaling option. If you're able to build this item first and have it as like an auto attack reset, things like Xin Zhao run over the meta, which I mean he kind of is. Overall, I'm not hugely sold on this item being a great tank option, but as I'm rating the item as like rating it alongside a lot of the other options, it is very valuable towards certain champions, which is why it can't be understated as like an A-tier option. Rek'Sai, Xin Zhao, of course, being two champions which very much value this as a good option. Even though it has been hotfix nerfed, still works effectively on like a decent couple of champions. I know even Jarvan sometimes picks it up, and some ADCs can like do weird things with the auto attack reset. So yeah, there's power behind this item, definitely. Warmogs, I despise this item. I think it's terrible. It's purely health and then health out of combat, where as a tank you really struggle to get out of combat these days, where you are very much like tied to the front line. If you're able to weave in and out as a tank, like, I don't know, something's gone wrong within that fight. Overall, it just doesn't really fit the game these days. Warmogs was terrible last season. They've changed it this season, given it a bit more movement speed, and it still feels terrible. I don't believe there's any champion which really builds this unless they need their health like later on into the game. I believe maybe Shyvana built it last season, like the tank, the demonic Frostfire tank variation of Shyvana. You could pick it up third and like you'd have some value on it. But yeah, overall, I think this item's pretty bad. You're not really looking to pick this up. You do just kind of want to itemize into resists later on into the game against the specific kind of targets within your lobby. Yeah, so find something in the C tier. And then the item name, which I cannot remember. It used to be very strong. They nerfed it from 25% to a flat 7, or nerfed it from 25% increased magic resist. Well, no, 25% increased magic. It like blocked it. It wasn't like an increased. Oh my god, my brain's been fried. The old version of this item used to do something funky with the damage which you took. Then they changed it to increasing magic resist, and then they changed it to increased flat magic resist. It is now a 70 flat. Okay, I'm getting my head around this. Overall, this item, I'm not sold on it. I think it's pretty bad as well. Unless you are into heavy AP burn comps, you are not really looking to pick this item up. Tends to be pretty bait. The other options have more kind of use circumstances. This one's more generalistic. If you do need that movement speed and you are looking for a more generalistic magic resist item, this is probably your best option. But as the other ones work better in specific circumstances and then they fill out most of the specific circumstances, this item tends to underperform slightly. Of course, you can still pick it up on certain champions and find relative success. I mean, most of these items you can, but yeah, effectively it's just not as good as the other magic resist options. Overall, those are my thoughts. I kind of butchered the end of this video, but yeah, this is mostly designed towards being a kind of like generalistic idea of how strong tank items are, and like you can more effectively pick between what you need within that game. So yeah, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.